The billionaire Sheikh stood tall in the grand hall, his presence commanding every whisper and gaze. The endless gold inlaid on the walls gleamed softly under the crystal chandeliers, casting a halo that seemed almost divine around him. Power radiated off him like heat from the desert sun outside, impenetrable yet enigmatic. He surveyed the sea of hopeful faces before him, but none stirred his interest until a ripple of murmurs caught his attention. A woman had entered the room, but not alone. Cradled in her arms was a restless little girl, eyes wide and unsure amidst the opulence. Outside, the desert wind whispered secrets across the dunes, but inside the palace, a heavier silence reigned. The Emirate's jewel, this palatial arena of dreams and ambition, was rich with the scent of jasmine and rare spices. Plush Persian carpets cushioned every step, and tapestries woven with threads of silver and gold draped the walls. Yet, the cold judgment filling the air was thicker than the fragrance of oud burning in ornate incense burners. Here, tradition was law, and expectations were as rigid as the stone pillars supporting the domes overhead. Among the gathered candidates, eyes darted uneasily toward the woman, a picture of modest dignity, her daughter clutching a worn but beloved doll. Her presence disrupted the usual sterile focus of the interview room, like a sudden storm shattering a calm sea. Whispers flitted through the crowd, harsh and unforgiving. How can she bring a child to such an important meeting? Unprepared, naive. The stares were knives cloaked in silk, slicing at her resolve with unrelenting cruelty. Yet her gaze remained steady, lips pressed in quiet determination. No falter, no fear. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes narrowed, curiosity ignited beneath his customary cold mask. There was something unyielding about her calm, something he couldn't ignore. The tension thickened as the interview began. Her answers flowed with precision and passion, cutting through the murmur of disbelief like a sword through silk. Despite the swirling doubts that clung to her like shadows, she held her ground flawlessly. The child sat silently beside her, innocence framed amid ambition and challenge. Around her, others shifted uncomfortably, their skepticism palpable. But she stared straight back, her poise a silent defiance. The Sheikh watched, a strange mix of respect and a question he dared not voice. What strength did this woman wield? Born not just from intellect, but from the fierce fire of a mother who refused to be diminished. When the moment came to decide, a hush fell over the grand hall. Expectation and judgment battled in a delicate dance. Then, with a voice calm but resolute, the Sheikh broke the silence. "Bring the mother forward." A collective gasp erupted. Eyes widened, jaws tightened. He surprised everyone by not just acknowledging her presence, but by openly recognizing the power beneath her quiet exterior. The room's cold shadows seemed to retreat, eclipsed by something far brighter. Hope, courage, and a reevaluation of power. And before the next secret of this opulent realm unfolds, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this billionaire Sheikh has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, from which city do you follow this saga? And what twist do you think is coming? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The murmurs that swept through the grand hall after the billionaire Sheikh's decisive command rippled like the desert wind, swift, sharp, and impossible to dismiss. All eyes bore down on her, the woman who dared to stand defiantly with a child in her arms. For a fleeting moment, even the gilded chandeliers seemed to dim beneath the weight of expectation and curiosity. She stepped forward, each measured footfall silenced by the plush Persian carpets that softened the sprawling expanse beneath her. The worn doll in her daughter's small hands seemed incongruous amid the opulence, a fragile emblem of a life worlds apart from the glittering riches surrounding them. Yet neither mother nor child showed hesitation. Her eyes, deeply rooted in quiet dignity, met the Sheikh's unyielding gaze without a flicker of doubt. The Sheikh, a man forged by power and hardened by betrayal, found the room narrowing until only she remained in focus. His sharp eyes traced the delicate line of her jaw, the resilience carved silently into every muscle and sinew of her posture. His mind, usually a fortress of cruel calculation, stirred with questions he was unwilling to admit aloud. What tempest surged behind those calm waters? How had she survived the storms that bent yet did not break her? A servant approached, holding a velvet cushion, bearing a small, sealed envelope stamped with the Sheikh's insignia, an unexpected gesture that raised eyebrows among the assembled courtiers. Without breaking eye contact, the billionaire Sheikh reached out and broke the seal, drawing a single, folded photograph from within. He held it deliberately before the woman, the image exposed beneath the dazzling light, a photo of the Grand Palace's inner sanctum, but more importantly, a subtle clue hinting at treachery long suspected within his court. The crowd gasped, whispers tumbling like sand over dunes. The photograph was rumored to expose the secret meeting place of a faction, plotting against the very foundation of his reign. Yet it was how the woman reacted that stunned everyone most. Her daughter's grip tightened on the doll, while her face drained of color, lips trembling slightly. But it was not fear that flickered in her eyes. No, there was recognition, perhaps even a spark of vengeance, buried beneath layers of restraint. "She knows," the Sheikh murmured, the first time his voice softened. She reached into her modest purse and produced a folded note. Hands steady, she handed it to him. The Sheikh unfolded it carefully, reading the hastily penned words. Names, dates, places, a list of conspirators, and most shockingly, the signature of the palace's most trusted advisor. The hall fell into suffocating silence. This was no coincidence. No desperate plea masked as courage. This was a calculated move, an invitation to alliance wrapped in a guise of vulnerability. The billionaire Sheikh lowered the letter and met her gaze fully, voice low but commanding. "Why come to me with this knowledge? Why risk everything?" She swallowed, then spoke with unwavering clarity. because I want no part in their game, because my daughter deserves a future free of fear, and because I'm not the desperate woman you think I am." Her words were a flame, fierce and undeniable. His eyes narrowed, weighing her every syllable. Around them, the watching nobles exchanged startled glances. A humble woman, bearing a child, had just shifted the balance of power in this gilded cage. Yet doubt still writhed beneath the Sheikh's skin. What was her price? What did she want from him? Before the questions could take form, the palace doors burst open with a sudden force. 2 guards entered hastily, their faces grim, clutching a blood-stained scarf, a token from the palace kitchens, where a trusted chef had been found unconscious, murmuring about shadowy figures and whispered threats. The room's charged silence shattered like glass. "The conspiracy has begun," one guard declared. The Sheikh's demeanor shifted in an instant, a storm replacing the earlier calm. He turned sharply to the woman, whose composure faltered only briefly as she instinctively shielded her daughter. A flicker of stark realization passed between them. This was no longer a mere interview or test. It was survival. He took a step toward her, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "You brought this upon yourself, and maybe upon us all." Her gaze didn't waver. "Perhaps, but I will not stand idle as enemies poison your throne." A tension, almost electric, pulsed in the space between them. The court watched, breath held, as 2 worlds collided. The ruthless empire of the billionaire Sheikh and the fierce resolve of the woman seemingly misplaced among the silk and gold. The air grew thick with unspoken promises, and the scent of jasmine mingled with the distant threat of violence. Then, as if summoned by the heavy air, a servant hurried in, delivering a sealed parchment to the Sheikh. His eyes scanned its contents quickly, then lifted sharply. "An attack is imminent," he said, voice grim. "They have targeted the very heart of my domain, my family." His words hung like a shadow over the crowd. The woman's breath caught. Her daughter clung tighter, sensing the shift. And in that charged moment, the billionaire Sheikh made a choice that would bind their fates in ways no gold or power could undo. He looked back at her, his frost-bitten expression melting for the first time, revealing a vulnerability carefully hidden beneath layers of command. "Stay close," he ordered, voice low but irrevocable. Outside, the desert winds howled, as though warning of the coming storm. Inside, between the walls dripping with opulence, 2 souls, one born of privilege, one forged by hardship, prepared to face a danger that threatened to burn everything they held dear. The grand hall's golden light flickered, shadow and brilliance entwined, and beneath the surface, a secret deeper than any conspiracy stirred, one that would change the course of their lives forever. Because in the desert's heart, beneath the trappings of power and wealth, a single truth remained unspoken. No empire could stand when its own secrets began to bleed. The grand hall's golden light flickered once more, shadows stretching like restless spirits along the ornate walls. The sealed parchment in his hand weighed heavily, yet it was the woman's steady gaze that truly anchored the billionaire Sheikh's attention. The fragile figure of the mother, standing tall amid the swirling storm of palace intrigue, was suddenly the most formidable force in the room. His voice cut through the thick silence, low and deliberate. "Every moment you stay here with your daughter, you risk their wrath." The warning hung between them like a blade poised to strike. She met his eyes without blinking, the fierce fire of a protector undimmed. "Then risk is all I have left to offer." Her words trembled only once, a whispered confession beneath her guard. The air grew charged, a brittle harmony of promise and peril. He motioned for the guards. "Prepare a secure chamber for her and the child, no details spared." As servants and soldiers moved swiftly through the marble corridors, the woman caught the Sheikh's gaze and for the briefest instant saw something unspoken. A fracture in his armor, a vulnerability born not from weakness, but a rare willingness to trust. Outside, the desert wind howled in chorus with the palace's unrest, as if warning of a storm far worse than sand and sun. Inside the secured chamber, the ornate gold and silk that usually symbolized wealth now felt suffocating, like gilded walls closing in on the small family within. The child clung tightly to her mother's neck, her wide eyes reflecting uncertainty and a silent question about this strange new world. The woman sank onto the plush divan, exhaustion crashing upon her slender frame. "Tell me everything," the Sheikh demanded, his voice softer now, stripped of the grandiosity that masked his loneliness. She nodded, pulling the photograph and the note from the folds of her modest cloak. "I've watched from the shadows, gathering whispers, bits of truth hidden in plain sight. This is not some chance discovery. It is a game of survival." He listened as she detailed a web of betrayal, twisting through the palace veins. A trusted advisor swayed by greed, allies caught between loyalty and ambition, and a carefully timed assassination meant to shatter his reign. The Sheikh's expression darkened, a tempest brewing behind his cold eyes. "And you?" he asked, voice barely above a growl. "How do you fit into this web?" She swallowed, the child's small hand pressing hers with unexpected strength. "I am no pawn, nor victim. I am a mother. My past is tangled in this palace's shadow, though the truth cannot yet be spoken." A weight settled over the room, heavier than any threat outside the walls. The Sheikh rose, his figure a commanding silhouette against the jade and gold tapestries. "You hold secrets that breathe beneath these stones. The question is, can I trust you with my life?" She met his challenge with a reluctant nod. "More than you realize, because if I fall, my daughter falls, and neither will be spared by those who bleed this palace dry." Their eyes locked, a fragile truce formed in the silent space between defiance and desperation. Suddenly, a sharp knock shattered the fragile peace. A young messenger slipped inside, breathless, bearing a small, intricately carved box. Opening it carefully, the Sheikh's face tightened. Inside lay a single, bloodied finger bone, an unmistakable warning from the faction seeking to undermine him. He slammed the box shut, the sound echoing like thunder. "The others want me to understand what happens when trust is misplaced," the Sheikh said grimly. But with you, it is not trust that I fear, but what your presence will ignite. She nodded, her voice steady but resolute. It burn. I will fight the flames even at my own cost. The child stirred, eyes drifting shut as exhaustion claimed her. The woman cupped her, face gently, whispering a lullaby in a language as old as the desert itself, soft and haunting. The Sheikh's gaze softened ever so slightly, the reigning monarch momentarily unmasked by the purity of that moment. But the guards outside were not idle. Murmurs of tension rippled through the palace like a swarm of locusts descending. Whispers of rebellion, hidden alliances, the inevitability of confrontation. That night, beneath the glimmering stars that watched silently over endless dunes, the palace stood on the precipice of chaos. And within its heart, two souls, one forged in opulence, the other tempered by sacrifice, prepared to face a destiny neither could escape. The Sheikh stepped closer to the woman, lowering his voice so that only she could hear. You must know, the enemy may already be among us. Someone close, cloaked in loyalty, but sharp with betrayal. Her eyes narrowed, reflecting a newfound resolve. Then we must unmask the traitor before the dagger finds its mark. A slow, dangerous smile curled on his lips. I had forgotten how dangerous hope can be. She returned the smile, fragile but fierce. And I had forgotten how necessary it is. Outside, distant rumblings echoed, not thunder, but the heavy footsteps of the approaching storm. Inside, beneath golden chandeliers and centuries of power, a secret stirred, one that promised to shatter the palace's fragile peace. A single whisper escaped the woman's lips, barely audible, but carrying the weight of an irreversible truth. There is another secret, one that could unmake us all. The Sheikh's eyes widened, the shadows deepening in their depths. Tell me, he demanded. But before she could answer, the grand doors burst open with violent force. A figure cloaked in. Midnight entered, eyes glowing with malice and secrets yet untold. And with that, the silent war that had been brewing beneath the surface erupted, turning allies into enemies, trust into poison. The billionaire Sheikh and the woman exchanged one last look, a promise sealed not in gold, but in the burning certainty that their fates were now inexorably entwined. As swords of conspiracy clashed in the shadows, the true battle for the heart of the emirate had only just begun. The flicker of the golden chandeliers cast long shadows that twisted like restless serpents along the marble floor. The room seemed to hold its breath, the heavy air saturated with tension, sharper than any dagger hidden in the silk folds of the palace drapes. The sealed parchment clenched in the billionaire Sheikh's hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a storm brewing just beneath the surface of his controlled demeanor. He turned slowly, gaze locking with the woman's unwavering eyes. In that moment, the warmth that once surrounded her presence gave way to something colder, fierce, an unspoken alliance forged in quiet desperation. The fragile mother who had dared challenge his dominion was no longer just a candidate or an inconvenient puzzle piece. She was a force to reckon with. Prepare yourself. His voice cut through the fragile quiet. Tonight, everything changes. His words fell heavy, echoing off the gilded walls like a prophecy, rather than a threat. The woman's grip tightened instinctively around her daughter, who nestled closer, sensing the gathering storm despite her youth. "I have no choice but to stand," she whispered, voice steady, though laced with a trembling edge. "For her future, for ours." The Sheikh studied her for a moment longer, the flicker of vulnerability beneath his icy exterior softening just enough to betray the man beneath the legend, scarred, wary, yet unwilling to let go of hope. Slowly, he gestured toward the guards, who flanked the room like silent shadows. "Escort them to the private quarters. No one is to know their location until this storm has passed." As the heavy doors closed behind them with a resonant thud, the palace's grandeur suddenly felt suffocating. Walls adorned with opulence now seemed prison-like, trapping fragile hope inside its gilded cage. The child's soft breaths mingled with the distant hum of whispered plots from the corridors beyond, an ominous lullaby. Inside the dimly lit chamber, the walls shimmered with reflected light from crystal sconces, casting fractured patterns across the silken cushions where the woman sank, fatigue finally claiming her. The child's eyelids fluttered, exhaustion competing against the restless unease that clung to her tiny frame like a shadow. The billionaire Sheikh stood across from them, gaze piercing yet tempered with cautious curiosity. "Tell me everything," he demanded softly, stripping away the commanding authority that usually subdued whole courts. "Every secret you hide in that heart of yours." She hesitated, then unfolded the photograph and the letter once more, her fingers tracing the lines as if to summon courage from their inked words. "This palace breathes deceit," she began, voice steady, though her eyes flickered with tired fire. "A trusted advisor, one I once believed untouchable, has woven betrayal into the very fabric of your reign." His jaw clenched, shadows darkening his face. "You speak with knowledge. How deep does this venom run?" Deeper than even the whispered conspiracies she had risked her life to uncover. "Further than walls and tapestries," she admitted. "It stretches into the courtiers who smile during the day, but sharpen their knives in the dark. There's a night meeting tonight, closer than anyone dares to suspect." The room seemed to contract with her words. The crystal vial of scented oil on the table trembled slightly, as if sensing the inevitable shattering of peace. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed. "Why did you come to me? Why risk your life to reveal this?" A silence stretched, weighted with unspoken truths, before she answered with quiet defiance. "Because the only choice left was to fight. Because my daughter deserves a world where fear does not govern her." Her words struck deeper than any plea. The child stirred in her arms, a small hand reaching out instinctively. The Sheikh's cold facade cracked for a heartbeat, revealing a man haunted by his own ghosts. The tempest of betrayal, loss, and love swirling inside him. Suddenly, the faintest sound, soft footsteps cloaked in urgency, broke the fragile silence. The door creaked open, and a breathless servant stepped inside, eyes wide with dread. "Your Highness," the servant said, voice barely above a whisper. "Word has come. The traitorous faction moves sooner than expected. They plan to strike the central council chamber tonight." The Sheikh's brow furrowed, the calculated calm replaced by a predator's instinct. "Tonight?" His voice dropped low, reverberating through the chamber like thunder. Then we have no time to waste. His gaze fixed on the woman. You've placed yourself in the eye of a storm that could consume us all. She met his eyes without flinching, and I will not flee, not when. The flames threaten everything I hold dear. The room pulsed with an electric tension, the fragile alliance between the opulent monarch and the defiant mother, a beacon amid the gathering chaos. The Sheikh took a slow step closer, the heat of his presence washing over her like the desert sun at midday. His voice lowered, a rare softness threading through the steel. You must understand, trust here is a luxury we cannot afford. Her lips curled into a faint, stubborn smile. Then let this be a war of trust and betrayal. I fight not for your crown, but for my daughter's tomorrow. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Two worlds collided, each shaped by sacrifice and strength. The fragile bond between power and hope felt as delicate as the silk scarves adorning the windows, yet more resilient than the ancient stone foundations. Beneath their feet, suddenly, the chamber's heavy doors burst open with a violent crash. Guards surged in, weapons drawn, faces hard as granite. A figure stepped through the shadows, a man cloaked in midnight, his presence cutting through the room like a judgment. His eyes flickered with cruel amusement, but beneath the gaze lay secrets darker than night itself. The woman's breath hitched, her daughter clutching her skirt with trembling fingers. The Sheikh's voice was cold steel. I should have known the enemy would not wear a stranger's face. The intruder smiled, slow and venomous. Loyalty is a currency easily bought, Your Highness, but tonight the price will be paid in blood. A taut silence followed, broken only by the distant call of a desert wolf, a mournful echo that sealed the promise of the coming nightmare. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze met the woman's once more, a storm raging silently between them. Hold fast to your courage, he breathed, because this night will decide everything we are and everything we will become. And as the shadows deepened around them, a single whispered truth slipped from the woman's lips, a truth that would unravel the fragile ties of trust and bind their fates in a way neither had ever imagined. There is one among us who wears the face of family, but hides the heart of the assassin. The clamor of the guard's entrance still echoed faintly as the cold chamber doors shut behind them, sealing off the grand echo of the palace. The crystal sconces cast fractured light upon the silken cushions where the woman sank, weariness etched deep into her bones. Her daughter, small and fragile in her arms, nestled close, but stirred restlessly, the child's wide eyes reflecting uncertain dreams, haunted by whispers of danger. Across the room, the billionaire Sheikh's gaze bore down on her, his usual icy command softened by an unusual trace of vulnerability. The fierce ruler, whose name struck awe across the emirate, now seemed haunted not only by the threat shadowing his court, but by the fragile woman who refused to break beneath its weight. Tell me everything, his voice came low, an order wrapped in quiet desperation. No detail spared. She drew a slow breath, reluctant to expose the fragile secrets she guarded, yet knowing the gravity of their predicament left no room for silence. "This palace," she began, voice steady, though tinged with exhaustion, "breathes poison. The betrayal is not whispered only in corridors. It festers in the smiles worn by those you trust most. The advisor I named, he is but one strand in a web far wider and darker." Her fingers tightened imperceptibly around her daughter's shoulders, sending an unspoken message of protection. "There are whispers of a meeting tonight, closer than the council, near the heart of the power you wield, yet hidden beneath layers of deceit." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed to slits, the grand hall's opulence seeming to fade behind the weight of imminent treachery. "You came here risking everything. Why?" Her gaze did not falter. "Because I am not merely a mother seeking safety. I am a woman shaped by fire. This child deserves a future where fear does not dictate our every breath." The words struck the room with the force of a desert storm. Beneath his cold exterior, the Sheikh's chest tightened, a pulse of recognition and reluctant admiration flickering faintly in his eyes. Silence pressed in, the delicate truce between them almost shattered by the shadows lurking just beyond the door. Then, the faintest sound, quiet footsteps, hurried, urgency etched in their rhythm, cut through the stillness. The door creaked open once more, a breathless servant stepping inside, eyes wide with looming dread. "Your Highness," the messenger breathed, voice barely above a whisper, "the traitorous faction moves tonight. Their strike targets the central council chambers." A slow, sharpening edge etched itself across the Sheikh's jaw. "Tonight," he echoed, voice low and fierce. "There is no time for hesitation." He turned back to the woman, the flicker of steel in his gaze now replaced by something more fragile, an unspoken plea for alliance. "You pulled yourself into this storm willingly," he said softly. "Do you understand the peril you bring upon us both?" She met his eyes without blinking, resolve burning behind her calm exterior. "Perhaps," she whispered, "but to stand idle is to accept defeat. I will fight, not for crowns or gold, but for her." The fragile promise hung in the heavy air between them, as palpable as the scent of jasmine drifting faintly beyond heavy drapes. The chamber felt impossibly small, the walls adorned with gold and silk seeming to close in like a gilded cage. The child shifted in sleep, clutching a threadbare doll, unaware that her cradle was the epicenter of a storm that threatened to shatter the very foundations of the empire. The Sheikh stepped closer, the heat of his presence intense, yet strangely grounding. The rumble of approaching conflict hummed in the air like distant thunder. "Trust is a scarce currency here," he confessed, voice roughened by years of betrayal. "Tell me, can you risk it? Or are you yet another pawn in a game played by shadows?" Her lips curved into the barest of smiles, fragile, fierce. "If I am a pawn, I will be one who overturns the board." Their gazes locked, worlds colliding in a moment heavy with countless unspoken promises and regrets. Suddenly, the chamber's silence shattered again. The heavy doors were thrown open violently, guards flowing in, weapons drawn, their faces carved from stone. A figure emerged, a man draped in midnight black, eyes gleaming with cold amusement, yet shadowed by darker secrets. His entrance stole the breath from the room, a living threat in human form. The woman's hand moved protectively over her daughter, whose small fingers gripped her silk. The Sheikh's voice sharpened into steel. The enemy wears not a stranger's face. The intruder's smile was slow and venomous. Loyalty is bought and sold, Your Highness. Tonight, the price is blood. A hush fell. A heartbeat stretched taut with anticipation. The calm before a storm so fierce it would toss kingdoms into ruin. The Sheikh's gaze found the woman's once more. Strength meeting strength, vulnerability hiding behind a mask of command. "Hold fast to your courage," he said barely above a whisper, "for what comes next will decide the fate of all we hold dear." The woman's breath caught, her eyes sharp with a truth she had long buried. "There is a second betrayal," she warned, her voice a thread cutting through the charged silence. "One far closer than the weapons drawn in this room. A wolf within the fold, with the heart of family, but the soul of a serpent." The Sheikh's eyes widened, shadows darkening the depths. The room seemed to freeze, a fragile moment suspended on the edge of devastation. And as the golden light flickered once more, the whispered truth settled like a landmine beneath their feet. The palace's greatest danger was no outsider. It was the betrayal born in the bloodline itself. The chamber's heavy silence was shattered only by the steady breath of the child nestled in her mother's arms. A fragile heartbeat amid the storm gathering beyond those gilded walls. The opulence around them, the embroidered cushions, the scent of rare musk, the slow flicker of candlelight, felt like a fragile shell protecting them from the encroaching darkness. Yet there was no sanctuary from the weight of destiny pressing close, tightening like a noose around the fragile alliance, forged in whispered truths and veiled threats. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes bore into hers, the flicker of judgment tempered by something rare, curiosity, grudging respect, and an unspoken plea for truth. His voice, low and commanding, broke the stifling quiet. "Tell me everything, the threads of this betrayal, woven through my court, spun from shadows and lies. Spare no detail." She drew a shuddering breath, steadying herself as the child stirred anew, small fingers clutching the worn doll with desperate resolve. "The advisor you once trusted, the man whose counsel shaped your reign, has sold you to ambition's cruelest masters," she said, voice edged with sorrow and steel. "But he is but one thread. There are others, wolves dressed in loyalty's skin, moving in silence beneath the golden light, waiting to strike when trust is weakest." Her gaze locked with his, steady, unyielding, carrying the weight of battles fought in silence, sacrifices made in shadows. Tonight they gather in the depths of the palace, plotting the end of your reign and the ruin of all you hold dear. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, the light in his eyes flickering like a flame caught in a desert wind. "And you, why bring this poison within my walls? What game do you play, mother? Spy, traitor, or something far more dangerous?" A flicker of sadness crossed her face, but it was swallowed swiftly by resolve. I carry no loyalties to dragons or thieves. I am a mother, nothing more and nothing less. My daughter's future is the compass that guides every secret I gather, every risk I take. The child's breath grew heavier, eyelids fluttering against the exhaustion of innocence in a world that would offer little mercy. The Sheikh stepped closer, the heat radiating from him, a stark contrast to the cold fear he masked behind regal authority. Trust is fragile here, forged only through blood and fire. How can I believe in a stranger's words, a woman who walks unarmed into a court laced with poison? Her fingers tightened around the child's small shoulder in silent vow. Because if we do not stand united, none shall survive the storm to come. Before the Sheikh could respond, the heavy oak doors swung open with urgent force. 2 palace guards entered, their faces carved with dread, bearing tokens of violence. A shard of broken glass, stained with deep crimson. Behind their grim expressions rode a whisper carried on the tense air. The first strike was near. The room contracted into a deathly hush as the gravity of the moment pressed down like the scorching sun upon the desert. Sands, the Sheikh's cold mask cracked, revealing a flash of raw fury and a glimmer of something rarely seen, a flicker of vulnerability as he issued a terse command. Double the guards around the council chamber. No one enters or leaves without my say. He turned then, gaze catching the woman's eyes once more. The unspoken understanding between them hung heavy. This was no longer a battle of secrets or a tentative alliance. It was a war for survival, a war they were now bound to fight together. The woman's voice was barely above a whisper, yet it reverberated with undeniable strength. There is something you must know, something darker than any alliance or betrayal. The true threat is not in whispers or secrets, but in blood. The Sheikh leaned in, the sharp lines of his face hardening. Explain. She hesitated for a breath before the weight of her truth broke free. The traitor is closer than you realize. Someone who wears the face of family, who holds your trust like a dagger in their hand. They move among us, pretending loyalty while weaving ruin. A chill settled over the chamber, cooler and deadlier than the desert night outside. The child's small hand twitched in sleep, oblivious to the storm gathering around her cradle. The Sheikh's gaze darkened, eyes narrowing until the gold flecks seemed to burn with inner fire. The serpent in the garden, a shadow in the throne room. The air thickened, pulses quickened, and every breath held the promise of upheaval. The whispered truths that had bound them now threatened to unravel everything. The ticking of an unseen clock echoed between the walls, the inevitable approach of reckoning. Suddenly, a sharp rap echoed from outside the chamber, followed by hurried footsteps. A messenger, desperate and wide-eyed, stepped inside, clutching a crumpled letter. "Your Highness," he gasped, "the night meeting has been moved forward. The conspirators will strike within hours, not in the council chamber, but at the very heart of your family's sanctuary." The Sheikh's blood ran cold, stone-cold fury darkening his tone. "They move faster than we thought. We have no time. Gather all loyalists. Prepare for siege." He faced the woman once again, the iron beneath his silk garments stark against her fragile frame. Your presence here? It is no accident. You're the spark that could ignite the flames of change, or the fuel that could consume us all. Her gaze was unwavering, fierce in its quiet fire. Then let the fire come. I will not run, and I will not hide. We will face the ashes together, or burn alone. A sudden tension gripped the space. A collision of power, hope, and desperate trust, binding two souls forged from different worlds, but now irrevocably linked by fate. And just as the first flicker of a shadow crossed the grand threshold, the Sheikh's voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with foreboding. There is one more secret, a shadow from your past, wrapped in silk and lies, waiting. Her heart stilled. Outside, the desert wind moaned like a ghost. Inside, the palace braced for betrayal, as two destinies collided in a storm that neither gold nor power could quell. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind the guards, muffling the distant echoes of the palace halls, and leaving only the flicker of candlelight and the scent of rare musk to fill the chambers. Suffocating air. The child stirred softly in her mother's arms, her small fingers clutching the worn doll, as if it were a talisman against the encroaching shadows. Outside, the desert night stretched endlessly, bitter winds murmuring ancient warnings, but inside, the weight of betrayal pressed closer than the sands underfoot. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze remained fixed, burning into the woman's steady eyes. His usual stoic command wavered, replaced by a rare glimmer of vulnerability, a flicker that spoke of the tempest roaring beneath his cold surface. "Tell me everything," he demanded crisply, voice low but thick with desperation. No word omitted, no secret too dark. She inhaled sharply, gathering the remnants of her strength like armor. The delicate curve of her jaw was set, defiant despite the exhaustion shadowing her face. "The poison runs deeper than you imagine," she began, voice steady but soft as silk on steel. "The advisor you once trusted is merely the surface of a web spun by those hungry for power. They call themselves loyal, but their blades are drawn in shadow." A flicker of pain brushed across the Sheikh's features, the sharp lines momentarily softened by the sting of that betrayal. His hand clenched slightly at his side. How far does this rot extend? Into the courtiers who smile in daylight, yet sharpen their knives beneath the moon, she said, drawing a trembling breath as her daughter shifted quietly. Tonight, a secret council convenes, not in the grand chambers, but in a hidden sanctum within the palace. They plan to strike at the heart of your dynasty. The room seemed to close around them, the golden tapestries bending with the weight of impending treason. The crystal candle holders trembled, as if echoing the fragile tension hanging between the two souls locked in this dangerous dance. "Why risk everything by bringing this to me?" His voice cracked, the vast loneliness behind his power bleeding through. "What do you want in return, Mother? Mercy? Protection? Or something darker?" She held his gaze, unwavering, the flame of her courage burning brighter than the desert stars beyond the palace walls. "I ask for nothing but safety for my daughter, a future where her laughter isn't stolen by fear. I am no queen's pawn, no mercenary in your court. I am a woman who has been forged in fire, and will fight without hesitation. Her words stirred something raw inside him, an ache, a hope, perhaps regret. The child nestled closer, small breaths mingling with the heavy silence that fell. Suddenly, the chamber doors banged open again. 2 guards barged in, faces grim, bearing a torn, bloodied scarf, a grim token from the kitchens where a trusted chef had been left unconscious, mumbling of shadows and whispered threats. The air pulsed with urgency. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed to slits, the cold steel of his command returning. The first strike has come sooner than we feared. His gaze locked onto the woman's. This is no longer a game of whispers, but of survival. You have chosen to stand with me. Are you prepared to pay the price? She barely hesitated, voice raw with determination. I will fight with everything I have, even if it means burning with you. The slightest shift flickered in the room, a mix of brittle hope and stark fear. The palace, with its ancient walls and glittering chandeliers, suddenly felt like a caged storm. The Sheikh took a step closer, breath warm near her ear. Trust in this palace is scarce as rain in the desert. If you betray me, there will be no mercy. Her lips curved in a shadow of a smile, fierce, yet fragile. Then let us burn the desert together, or die trying. Before either could speak further, the heavy doors groaned once more. A figure stepped inside, swathed in midnight robes, eyes shining with cold promise and cruel secrets. The room tensed as his gaze swept the chamber. He smiled slowly, venom dripping from the curve of his lips. Loyalty here is bought cheaply, Your Highness. Tonight the cost will be paid in blood. The Sheikh's voice dropped to a growl. So the serpent reveals itself at last. The woman's hand moved protectively over her daughter, whose eyelids fluttered in uneasy sleep. A slender thread of fear wove itself through the tension. There was a darker storm coming, one sharper than any blade, one born not of enemies beyond the gates, but of betrayal seeded deep within the soil they both stood upon. The billionaire Sheikh and the woman shared a look, strength meeting strength, vulnerability folding into resolve. It was no longer just a matter of palace politics, secrets, or power. It was a fight for their very souls. Then, barely a whisper, but heavy with unspoken doom, the woman breathed, "There is another, one closer than any of this." The Sheikh's eyes darkened, swirling shadows pooling where cold gold had rested. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. "A wolf in the fold," she said, voice low yet steady. "One who wears the mask of family but harbors the heart of a traitor." His jaw clenched hard enough to show white knuckles beneath the silken cuff. And as the last candle guttered in the heavy chamber, a single, chilling truth settled between them. The greatest danger was no foreign assassin. It was blood. And soon, the blood that would stain this palace would be their own. The faint echo of the intruder's venomous words still lingered in the heavy air as the chamber doors slammed shut once more, sealing the fragile alliance within their gilded prison. Gold flickered and danced on the polished surfaces. But beneath that dazzling light, shadows lengthened, curling like serpents ready to strike. The child, nestled against her mother's chest, stirred in a restless sleep, her small fingers tightening around the worn doll. A silent anchor amidst the tempest rising beyond the palace walls. The billionaire Sheikh remained motionless, his gaze dark pools reflecting the flickering candlelight and the storm of betrayal that now threatened to consume everything. Fierce and unyielding, his voice emerged finally, low and edged with the authority earned by years of harsh rule. The traitor walks among us, cloaked in deceits no knife can cut. She met him without flinching, the fire in her eyes unwavering. Not just cloaked, entwined in family, in blood. The serpent will strike where our guard is lowest. Her words, barely a whisper, carried the weight of a prophecy no one dared to ignore. The air grew thick with tension, every breath heavy with the precarious tightrope they now walked. The opulent chamber, once a sanctuary of power, felt suddenly suffocating, the scent of jasmine and rare spices, mingling with a sharp metallic tang, as if the very walls anticipated the blood that might soon stain their floors. He stepped closer, the heat of his presence a stark contrast to the cold threat surrounding them. "What must we do?" His voice, so often unsparing, now bore a rare vulnerability, laced with desperate resolve. "We must move swiftly. Tonight's meeting, they have shifted plans. The ambush will no longer be in the council chamber." Her fingers brushed the curls that shadowed her daughter's forehead, a tender gesture masking the steel beneath. "They mean to strike at the heart of your family sanctuary, the private quarters." The room seemed to shrink at her revelation. The flicker of the candlelight caught in his eyes, revealing a flicker of raw pain beneath the regal facade. "My sanctuary, that they would dare." "They believe, they hold the blade," she interrupted, voice firm. "But we hold the will to survive." The Sheikh looked away briefly, jaw clenched, as if to crush down a storm lurking inside. When he met her gaze again, the cold, commanding mask was fractured by something softer, an invitation, an unspoken request for trust in a world where loyalty was as shifting as desert sands. "Prepare the loyal guards. Sound the silent alarm only I command. No one outside this room must know tonight's truth." His words fell like a steady drumbeat, igniting urgency behind each syllable. Her breath caught as she nodded, already feeling the weight of their fragile pact. The child stirred once more, eyes fluttering open, sensing the unspoken peril surrounding her. The mother's heart ached with a fierce protectiveness that no palace gold could buy. "Will they suspect me?" she asked, voice a mere tremor beneath the clamor of uncertainty. His gaze softened, not with pity, but with something far more profound. "They suspect shadows, eyes in darkness, but you are the unexpected. The question none have answered." She swallowed, the taste of coming battle bitter but necessary. "Then let me be their reckoning." A sudden rap echoed against the wooden door, sharp and urgent. A messenger stepped inside, breath ragged, eyes wide with the weight of black news. "Your Highness," he whispered, distributing a scroll sealed with crimson wax. "The conspirators have accelerated. The gathering has been moved forward by hours. They aim to strike before the moon reaches its highest point. The Sheikh's jaw tightened. The map of the palace unfurled in his mind. Corridors and secret passages, reading like veins, leading to the heart of everything he had built and fought to protect. We have no time. He folded the scroll with deliberate care. Rally every loyal guard. Set the traps we cannot see. Tonight, our fortress becomes a battlefield. The woman's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. My presence here, it is no longer just about survival. It is about justice. He regarded her, the ruler shaped by desert storms and palace intrigues. Now reminded by this woman that even the strongest walls crumbled without allies. A dangerous hope, he murmured, and dangerously rare. They exchanged a look heavy with promises unsaid, an unspoken affirmation that this night would alter their destinies forever. The child's quiet breathing slowed as sleep reclaimed her, innocence untouched, yet perched on the razor's edge of upheaval. Outside the chamber, the palace breathed unrest. Footsteps echoed on marble. Whispered orders passed between shadows. The glittering chandeliers above cast prisms of light that glinted like shattered dreams, fragile and fleeting. Then, a sound barely above a whisper slipped through the locked door, a soft but chilling confession that twisted the knife deeper. There is one more truth, the woman said, barely audible. The serpent's venom runs from within the walls of this very room. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, dark and urgent. Tell me. Before she could reply, the door creaked open once more, and a figure appeared. And with him came a secret that would rend the fragile trust they had forged. The truth the woman feared to speak hung heavy in the air, a blade poised above their fragile alliance, ready to fall. The battle for the billionaire Sheikh's empire, and for the woman who had become his unexpected strength, was about to begin. Beneath the gilded ceilings and star-lit deserts, where love and betrayal walked hand in hand, and no secret remained buried forever. The moment the heavy doors of the chamber closed behind the midnight-cloaked intruder, the air seemed to thicken, a silent storm settling over the gilded walls that had borne witness to centuries of power and betrayal. The child, nestled softly in her mother's arms, stirred but remained calm, sensing the fragile alliance between two forces now entwined against a common enemy. The billionaire Sheikh's piercing gaze never wavered from the figure standing before him. The venom in the intruder's smile was met with unyielding cold in the Sheikh's eyes. A storm, barely contained, woman who had stood by him through whispers and threats, her resolve the beacon slicing through the darkness. Without a word, the Sheikh stepped forward, his presence commanding silence, as if the air itself obeyed his will. His voice was low, but filled with a potent certainty. You have brought destruction to these halls for too long. No more. The intruder's laugh was hollow, but it faltered under the weight of the Sheikh's mandate. Swiftly, the guards moved as one, surrounding the traitor, their weapons poised, but restrained by the unspoken command of their leader. Turning to the woman, the Sheikh's features softened for a rare moment, vulnerability bleeding through the cracks in his armor. This palace would have fallen long ago, if not for your courage and the fierce love you bear for your daughter. She met his gaze, the exhaustion etched into her bones, now mingling with relief and a fragile hope. I only wanted her to have a future free from fear. Her voice cracked, but her spirit remained unbroken. Together, we can build that future. In the grand chamber, as the palace's conspirators were led away in chains, a shift rippled through the gathered nobles and courtiers. Shock gave way to cautious respect. The woman who had entered the hall, burdened by suspicion, was now seen as the fortress that stood between the emirate and ruin. Later, beneath the glittering chandeliers that had witnessed the harshest trials, the Sheikh and the woman retreated to a quiet terrace overlooking the desert. The vast expanse stretched beneath a moon waning gently, a silver cradle rocking the promise of dawn. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with deliberate tenderness. You carry a fire within you that even I, hardened by betrayal, cannot extinguish. She smiled softly, warmth blossoming through the cold desert night. And you, born of power and pain, have found a reason to trust again. Their fingers intertwined, the thread of their intertwined destinies woven into a tapestry of resilience and redemption. The child, cradled between them, offered a small laugh, a sound lighter than any treasure in the palace vaults. As the first blush of sunrise painted the horizon in hues of rose and gold, the palace awoke to a new era, one forged not by treachery or fear, but by the strength of an unexpected alliance. The billionaire Sheikh, once an untouchable monolith of command, now stood as a man transformed. He spoke softly, eyes reflecting the dawn's promise. The empire we protect will no longer be ruled by shadows, but by truth and courage. The woman rested her head against his shoulder, the weight of the battles behind them lifting with the sun's warm embrace. And together, we will raise a legacy worthy of our daughter's dreams. Below, the courtiers whispered of the night's upheaval and the remarkable woman who had rewritten fate itself. Murmurs of hope blossomed where suspicion had once festered. In the heart of the emirate, where gold met sand and secrets once thrived in darkness, light now poured, a testament to love's power to conquer even the deepest betrayal. The palace gardens, tended with renewed care, began their first bloom in years. Jasmine perfumed the evening air, mingling with the desert breeze, carrying with it the promise of peace. And on the terrace, the billionaire Sheikh held the woman close, the past's wounds healing beneath the vast Arabian sky. His voice, a whispered vow to the rising sun, carried across the dunes. No empire lasts without truth, no life without love. We have both now. Her eyes shone with tears unafraid, her smile a quiet defiance against the storms they had weathered. Forever, she breathed. The child's laughter tinkled like a bell in the morning light, a fragile melody of hope and new beginnings. The desert winds sang then, not of betrayal or revenge, but of hearts united and futures reclaimed. And as day broke over the endless sands, the empire stood strong, its foundation no longer gilded with fear, but built firm on love, trust, and the unyielding courage of a mother and a sheikh who dared to believe in redemption.